Now here is the Let's Stay Together show with Reverend Ricardo McCain and author Brenda McCain, helping you to rebuild your relationships with God.
Hey, good evening and welcome to the Let's Stay Together show. I'm your host, Reverend Rick McCain, along with my baby, my girl, my boo, author Brenda McCain with the Let's Stay Together show. How you doing, baby?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't hear you, but I'm doing great. Go ahead and speak to me.
You can't hear me, baby?
Yeah, I can hear you right here, but I can't hear you on the thing. But we'll get that together. Go ahead.
Okay, then. Well, welcome to the Let's Stay Together Talk radio show where we learn the rhythms of all relationships. And to know our glory, you have to do what, babe?
You've got to know our backstory.
That's right. And tonight's topic is a serious one. It's no more confusion, the pursuit of restoring mental balance. 1 in 5 adults experience a mental health condition every year. 1 in 20 lives with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. In addition to the person directly experiencing by a mental illness, family, friends, and communities are also affected. 50% of mental health conditions begin by the age of 14, and 75% of mental health conditions develop by the age of 24. The normal personality and behavior changes of adolescents may mimic or match symptoms of mental health condition. Early engagement and support are crucial to improving outcomes and increasing the promise of recovery. Now, to help us discuss mental illnesses, mental disorders, and treatments on the McCain train tonight is none other than Joseph Tellez. What is MSW? I want to say it, but I want to know what it means. MSW.
MSW stands for Masters of Social Work.
Okay, and what is QMHP?
I am a qualified mental health practitioner.
Okay.
I like that word, qualified.
Qualified. And he is also the director of operations and a behavior health therapist that provides mental health therapeutic services for the LAYNIE Foundation in Matteson, Illinois. Mr. Tellez specializes in crisis intervention and crisis prevention mental health services for high-risk populations. Mr. Tellez also provides intensive outpatient therapeutic services for children, adolescents, and families. And if you want to learn more about him, check out our website at www.letsstaytogethertalkshow.com. And before we get into the serious topic, I'm going to give you a little scripture here. And it is Matthew 17:14-20. It says, "And when it came to the crowd, a man came up to him and kneeling before him said, 'Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and he suffers terribly. For often he falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not heal him.' And Jesus answered, 'O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me.' And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly."
That was long. I thought you was going to do
That's
a sermon
one
after
scripture.
that.
That's a good scripture to read.
Yeah, it
though.
is a good scripture to read.
Scripture.
Scripture, yeah.
Don't be trying to play with me. Scripture. Look, he's showing now because we got a man in.
I have a man on there. They always want to say I'm showing off.
Scripture.
I get Jesus here every time. I don't need a man here. That's okay. Are you ready for me, girl?
I'm ready for you, boy.
Hey, you know what? We've got Joseph here, and Joseph, they say I'm showing off, so let me keep on showing off here. I was reading some information about mental health, and I believe that in some cases the United States and the world abroad is not taking, this as serious as we should. I think we've kind of, minimized it, to a normalcy that it's okay or it's acceptable. But it's basically saying that mental disorders are common in the United States and internationally, and an estimate 26.8% of Americans at the age of 18 or older are suffering from some kind of diagnostic mental disorder in any given year. So, Joseph, one of my questions I want to ask you is that, are we seriously looking at mental health the way we should, or are we now, because it's a part of society and it's been here for a long time, we're kind of making kind of a normal thing and we're not really looking at it as an important thing that we need to try to resolve? Because it just seems like now we're just it's just something normal. So are we looking at it as serious as we need?
The United States, among other countries, are by far, I would say, they acknowledge mental health issues and mental health conditions by far much more than other countries. However, the way you explained it, or I heard you say almost like it's okay to be talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, but just to talk about it is one thing. To actually, work on really understanding and really working, and really the word I use in my services is improving. I try to stay away from words like good or bad.
Okay.
Okay, because it just is. And when you can look at something like it just is, then you can really find the areas where it needs improvement. However, the United States, us as a nation, it is not looking at it with the magnifying glass that we need to look at it with. And even with the adult statistics, I have another statistic because I work primarily with children, children from the ages of 4 to 17. So within these children, 1 in every 10 children suffer from some form of mental health diagnosis or disorder.
Yeah.
So if you have 10 children in the room with us, one of them for sure has some form of mental health, issue, diagnosis, disorder, however you want to look at it. But that is a very alarming statistic. And I didn't realize how powerful the statistic was until I really moved to the population of children and adolescents, and I really started seeing how serious these issues were and how much they were really going overlooked.
Yeah. And, one of the things you were saying, because one of the things I looked at as well is they were talking about early diagnosis, and sometimes people don't actually look at it at that early stage that can happen to a child, but they do have a lot of disorders that, we're recognizing more and more that children get at an early stage, and that we're just kind of looking at it as this, oh, he's just rambunctious, or he's just this, and we're not really, diving into that there might be a disorder that this child has that if treated earlier, the symptoms might be able to be improved. Why do we as Americans always seem to somehow, we don't want to look at it, we don't want to accept it because this is a child and we don't want to accept that this possibly could be happening to someone that we love.
Absolutely. And you, before you mentioned that piece, when you opened up with your initial statement, you said as society as a whole. Yeah. So this is a societal trend, a generational trend. And I have a quote here, and it says, mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. Neither is talking about it.
Right.
Now, when we talk about it as a whole, it's okay to discuss it as an overall blanket generally. However, when it's your daughter, your son, your brother, someone that's, immediately close, well, then it becomes kind of that thing that you don't want to bring up. You don't even really want to acknowledge it. A lot of cases that I've seen, just working in the field, it's almost that the loved ones of the person or the child who has the disorder is almost in a state of denial.
Yeah.
And that is something very important with the work that I do at my agency, because we don't just service these children and adolescents. We service the entire family. So a family therapy session could look like a traditional family therapy session where it's, the parents and the siblings. It could be the siblings along with the client who has the disorder. It could be just the mother or the father.
Right.
However, again, the family is a unit. It's a system. So if you can look at the child who comes in with whatever this disorder or this diagnosis is, and especially when I meet these children, I don't look at the disorders or the diagnoses. I really look at what the system looks like and what the family unit looks like and really how everybody's really impacted with this.
Yeah. I want to jump in, babe. Sorry about that, Joseph, but I want...
Just broke the man off. He's giving
right,
information,
and
you just want to jump in.
But before
this ain't
really get into it, you taught me to do double dutch to get in.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I know he's going to be very informative. Let's step back. I just want people to know what is the definition of mental illness. I wanted to go to step by step so they can understand what it is, the different layers of it. So what is mental illness?
So mental illness is any form, of a mental or a psychological category, because there is a category which I don't know if we're familiar with the DSM-4, which is now the DSM-5 that we're moving to.
Okay.
So within this DSM-5, there is a very big textbook with all kinds of different diagnoses. I believe we were talking about OCD earlier.
Right.
We know the big one the big one of depression that we always hear about, bipolar. However, this DSM-5 is a very thick book that you have to get trained on just to even learn how to read it. So, but what this is it is a screening tool, and there are certain characteristics, there are certain symptoms, the same way that you have a cold, or the same way that you may have the flu, or whatever kind of actual physical health disorder or illness. There are certain symptoms, psychological-wise, behavior-wise, that present themselves. And if you can meet the criteria, if there is more than one thing going on, then that usually constitutes exactly what forms the diagnosis, which constitutes the mental illness component.
So it changes the thinking of an individual and their behavior set, the mental illnesses?
Absolutely. So the mental illness and how it impacts the individuals, absolutely. Whoever really is working through these mental illnesses, their outlook on life is going to be completely, I don't want to use the word skewed, but it is going to be somewhat distorted from someone who does not have this mental illness disorder, whether it's bipolar, whether it's depression, whether it's the OCD. And really understanding what these symptoms look like, then you can really start to really understand what the individual goes through. For example, someone who may be diagnosed with bipolar may have different forms of episodes, which is a manic episode or a hypomanic episode. Okay, and what that means is the highs and lows. So it may look completely different. Now, when, we can really, what you could try to do is you could try to kind of use situations where you've been really upset. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have, mental health diagnoses or disorders, but we do know how it is to be really upset and really angry. Okay, we also know how it is to be sad if something happens. However, if there's an imbalance for someone who has a disorder like bipolar disorder, there is a constant roller coaster of going up and down, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
So if you can really kind of take your own experiences, even though we know whatever life experiences we've been through, and we can kind of really try to see life through their lenses. Because even though we don't have that roller coaster, we can try to at least understand what they're going through, whether they're in a high mode or a high manic episode or a hypomanic episode. Yeah. Okay? And really that's the best way that I can try to explain. If you can try to put yourself in the shoes of these children, these individuals that have these disorders, it might make you kind of really take a different standpoint and look at the situation in a different lens to really try and understand it.
So, Joseph, one of the things I know when you was talking about the, what would you call it? You said the DM5, was that what it?
DSM-5.
DSM-5. I noticed that I looked on that. They said there's so many disorders. They tried to put it in a category of adults, children, and personal diagnosis. But it's just so difficult to put it in those three categories. So there's so many of them. And I think in a lot of cases, and I'm going back, to where we were talking about before my wife just decided to take it in a different way. I know.
Okay, I
but
wanted us to start from the beginning.
Okay, and that's what she wanted us to start at, and I'm fast paced, But do we get a point where sometimes with parents, they get a little bit embarrassed when they bring their child in? Let's talk about that, how we can kind of remove that embarrassment, because you were saying earlier that it's not, there's no shame to have, that you have a disorder. And a lot of us, as you were saying before, we get angry, and everybody get angry. So those are symptoms of a disorder, that a person who can't control that anger, and it's a repeat balance, something where it's get worse and worse. So we can kind of, simulate with it or understand it. But when it's our child, why is it that we seem to be so embarrassed of saying that our child has this, so much so that we won't even take them to the doctor? How can we get away from that?
Well, there's a really big word which really sums that all up, okay? And what mental illness, mental disorders, psychological disorders, all of these issues that we're discussing, they come with the stigma.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, and that stigma automatically says, it's almost like a black label. So if you have this diagnosis, then you automatically have this black label that you are going to act a certain way.
Right.
Right. And I mean, we can, and like I said, again, this is like a societal trend, and we can think, if you can think back through the decades or through really just growing up, and you could think of some people that you can remember. And what would people normally say if we seen somebody who was constantly going through like intense anger outburst.
Right.
Or really just kind of erratic behavior, how would we respond? What was something you would say if you've seen someone doing that?
They crazy.
Yeah,
they crazy.
Absolutely.
They crazy.
Absolutely.
Something wrong with them.
Right.
You know?
Don't mess with Joe.
You know,